Hello there and welcome to another Partners in Crime tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be learning how to make sparkly particles in Blender 3D. So this is what you should get when you're finished with this tutorial, and now let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is you want to delete the default cube by typing X on your keyboard and then clicking delete. Next, you want to press numpad 1 on your keyboard to go into front view, and then you want to bring the camera into front view by typing Control and then Alt and then numpad 0. Now that we've got our camera into front view, we're going to add in our particle emitter. So go into the top left of the screen here, click the Create tab, and under Add Primitive, click UV Sphere. So this is going to be the object that emits our particles. So now we're going to change the render engine from Blender Render to Cycles Render because we'll be using Cycles materials for our particles. So just click this up here and select Cycles Render. So now we're going to go into the particle section to the right of the screen here and scroll through this menu until you see these particle icons. You want to click on this tab and click New to add a new particle system. So now we've added an emitter type particle system, and if we play this down here, you can see we have some particles coming out. So just hit pause on that. What we want to do is we want to adjust the gravity on these particles, and then we want to adjust the look of the particles. So on the right of the screen here, you want to scroll down and click the fill weight section here and just drag the gravity slider down to 0. Okay, so now if we rewind and play this, the particles aren't affected by gravity. So I'm just going to hit pause there. So now we're going to adjust the look of our particles. So right now we have our particle type set to halo, which only really works in the Blender render engine. So since we'll be using cycles, we're going to make our particle system a group of objects that we're about to create. So select group in the particle type section here. And now we're going to add in the objects that will be our particles. So we're going to add in a Bezier circle. So Shift A on your keyboard, and once the dialog pops up, hover your cursor over curve and select circle. Rotate this circle 90 degrees on the X axis by typing R and then X and then 90, and press Enter to confirm the rotation, and type G on your keyboard and move this up to the side and just out of camera view and left click to confirm that. So now you want to go into the Curve Object Data tab and change the shape to 2D. That will fill in our circle nicely there. And now we'll size our circle down. So S, move your cursor in, and left click that. So now we have a nice small particle object. So what we're going to do now is we're going to basically have two different colors of particles. And we won't change the colors of the particles until we go into the compositor. But to make sure that we get our particles separated for the compositor, we're going to add an object index pass to our particle object. So let's go into the object settings tab there and change the pass index for this particle object to 8. Now we're going to Shift D to duplicate this particle object. Shift D, left click. And we're going to change our duplicated particle object's pass index to 7. So now that we've got those settings set, let's add an emission material for our particles and then group them together. So go into the materials section here and click New to add a new material and change the material type from diffuse to emission, and right click on our other particle object, this, and click the same there. So now both of our particles have the same material. So now if we right click on this object, we're going to duplicate our two different particles right here until we get about 8 particles in total, and then we're going to group them together and load them into our emitter object. So Shift D to duplicate this, scale it down. We're just going to Shift D to duplicate until we get some random scaling. So S, move cursor out, Shift D, S, size that in. Right click S and size it out. So we're just giving all of our particles some random sizes. Right click this one now, Shift D to duplicate, randomly size it by typing S on your keyboard and moving out your cursor, and then you left click to confirm the sizing. So just repeat this, Shift D, left click, Shift D, S, and left click. So now we have 8 particles. So if we type B on our keyboard and left click and hold over this and box select, we now have all of our particles objects selected. So now that we have them selected, we're going to group them by typing Ctrl G on our keyboard. And now we should be able to see them when we try to load particles into our emitter object. So let's right click on our emitter object, go into the particle settings tab, click the duplicate group box there and select group, and that's the particle group we just created. So if we rewind and play this, you can see tiny particles dropping off the screen there. I'll change the size of the particles so you can see them a little better. So what we want to do now is check rotation to make sure that our particles are rotated properly. And we can put the size back down now that we can see that they're working as they should. So if we rewind and play this, we've got some nice tiny particles coming out there. So what we're going to do is we're going to give our particles some turbulent movement. So let's see, let's uncheck emitter here so that Blender doesn't render the emitter object, which is our sphere. So we'll uncheck that. And now we're going to add in a force field. So let's see, we've got our cursor off to the side here, so just type Shift S on your keyboard and click cursor to center. So now when we add a force field, it should just add itself in the center there. So now type Shift A on your keyboard, and once this dialog pops up, just hover your cursor over the force field and click Turbulence. So now we've added ourselves a turbulent force field. So if we go into the physics setting, let's change the strength of our force field to 11 and change the flow of our force field to 3. This is just going to give us a nice strong turbulent effect. So if we rewind and play this, you can see our particles are moving quite nicely. But what I want to do is give it a little bit more turbulent movement. So what I'm going to do is hit pause on this. We're going to size up our force field a bit, so S and move your cursor out and left click to confirm that. And what we're going to do is we're going to make our force field kind of swish and beat our particles across the screen. So to do that, we're going to add a constant rotation to our force field so that we can get that nice movement. So let's rewind to the beginning frame and type I. And once the dialog pops up here, click rotation. So now we've added a keyframe for the rotation. Let's jump to a later frame, frame 11, and let's rotate it almost completely around. So let's do our Y 179 and type enter, and then I rotation. So now rewind and Alt A to play this. We got our force field spinning. But we want to make our force field constantly spin so that our particles are beating around the screen a little bit more. So what we're going to do is we're going to split the screen at the bottom. We're going to go into the graph editor, and we're going to make sure we have our rotation keyframes selected, and you want to click channel, extrapolation mode, and then linear extrapolation. And if you rewind and play this, you can see we've got our force field constantly rotating. It's rotating a little bit too fast, so what we're going to do is going to do SX3 and type enter, and that'll just space our keyframes out a little more and make our animation slower. So if you type Alt A, you can see we have a nice turbulent particle animation here. So that is looking pretty good. What we're going to do now is add a few more particles to make this look a little bit more fancy. Then we're going to make our background black and jump into the compositor. So right click on our particle emitter object, go into the particle settings tab, and now we're going to scroll through here. Okay, we're going to change the number of particles to 11,000. But before you change the number of particles, you want to make sure to save your blend file just in case your computer can't handle the amount of particles. So we're just going to put this up to 11,000. Rewind this and play it, and let's see how our particle animation does. So you can see we have a lot more particles, so it's looking really nice. We've just got them turbulently moving around the center of the screen. So let's make our background black and render it, and go into the compositor to finally edit the colors and glows of our particles. So go into the world settings tab, click the color box here, and pull this down to black. So now that we've got that set, we can now go into the, let's see, before we render this, we want to go into the render layers tab, and since we're using object indexes, I'm going to click this passes tab here. You want to make sure you have object index checked, otherwise it won't render the object indexes. So just check that and click render image. So now that our image is finished rendering, we can jump into the compositor and edit the colors. So let's do that. So click this up here and click compositing, and just check use nodes and backdrop, and click add output viewer. We're just going to pull this up here, and now let's hook the output of this to the input of the viewer. And now we're going to add our different glows and our different particle colors. So let's click add color mix, hook this up here and change it to add, because we'll be adding in our object index path. So hook that up in there. Click add converter ID mask, and this will just tell the object index path to use the objects with the index of any number we chose. So we chose 7 and 8 for our particles, so we're just gonna start with 8 here. And now if we adjust anything after this to this point, it will adjust the color or glow or any effect on the particle object we set with the pass index of 8. So now let's click add filter layer, hook it up here, change it to fog glow, and change the quality to high, and pull the threshold to 0. And we're going to shift D to duplicate this over again, so you can see we're getting some glow. Now that we've got that glow in there, let's add in our color editing. So add color RGB curves, scroll down and zoom out, hook it up here, and heighten the blue levels and lower the red levels, and this will just give us a nice cool blue. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. What we're going to do now is put this here, shift D, back there, and now we'll click this node here, B, box select over all of this, shift D to duplicate it, hook this up in here, and hook the index object path to here. And now we'll change it to 7 so that it so that our node set up here will affect the color of our object with the index of 7. So what we'll do here is we'll increase the red values and pretty much leave the blue values the same. We'll see if we get a purplish color. Okay, so now you can see some of our particles are bluish and some of them are purplish, and they're looking pretty good. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure the last node in our node setup is hooked up to the composite node. Go back into default view, go back into 3D view, and what we're going to do is our particles are looking a little bit big, so we're going to adjust the particle size, gonna put it down to 110. Put the random sizing up so that our particles will have random sizing. And we'll put the particle size up just a little bit so that they're not too small. And let's change the emitter geometry so that our particles come out a bit more initially. Rewind and Alt A to play this. So that is looking pretty good. Hit pause on that and render. And we're just going to wait for this to composite to see how our particles look. So now we have our rendered particles. So again, you can adjust any setting you like. You can make the particles bigger. You can jump into the compositor and adjust the red, green, and blue levels to give your particles some different colors. But for now, we're pretty much finished with this tutorial. So now that we're finished with this tutorial, we hope you found it helpful and can leave a like or a comment below if you did. And you can also subscribe for more tutorials from Partners in Coordinated Rendering of Ideas, Motion, and Effects. And you can check out our socials to see what we've been working on lately. So lately, we've been working on a redesign of our site and a new add-on that we plan to release within the next few weeks. So you can keep an eye out for that. And again, we hope you found this tutorial helpful. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more tutorials from Partners in Coordinated Rendering of Ideas, Motion, and Effects.